So let me introduce myself very quickly. My name is Chris van der Leij. I've been in corporate business for more than 20 odd years, and the last 15 years I've been working in the field of motivational speakers and training and coaching of people in large corporations such as Hewlett-Packard, Dell Corporation, Unilever, and you name it, all over the world. And the reason I'm here today is because one of my hobbies is, or one of my main interests is, what is it in my brain that makes me successful or not? How does my brain work? So I've got a very keen interest in the way the brain works, and I will be talking a little bit about it later on, because when I came to South Africa in 1995, I came across a science called neuro-linguistic programming. It was a science that originated in the US in the early 1970s, in the days of flower power, and it was put together by two geniuses, Richard Bandler, a programmer, a Gestalt therapist, a brilliant guy, and a professor of linguistics called John Grinder. And the two of them started discussing what is it that makes some people successful and others not. What makes it that makes some people sane and other people insane? Is there a way of actually identifying which way it goes, and can you influence it? So today my talk is about success. Now think about it. Success, you can do it. That sounds great, doesn't it? Question is, are you sure you can do it? And if you're not, why is that? So let's look at it in a little bit more detail. Did any one of you ever had a unique idea, something that you thought that could really make you rich? I had a couple of those in my days, and only to find out that I didn't do it because I was waiting too long. 6 months later, you find it on the shelves. Somebody has stolen your idea. Now, were they more intelligent than you were? No, you had the same idea. Were they richer? Probably not. So what was the difference? Well, they had something that we all want. They beat us to us because they had personal power. They had power within themselves that made them do it. So, what is that power? It's the power to take action. Not just dream about it, but to take action. To make sure what you've got in your mind is so vivid and so strong that you actually execute upon it. Now there's this beautiful lady, but she could ask herself, what could stop me from taking action like you would? Well, interesting enough, lots of things. When we were young, we started believing in things, and why? Because people told us so. People that we trusted told us so. My teacher, for example, I had a French teacher who told me I was useless at French. That year, I got Fs. He couldn't go any lower. The next year, of course, I had to double. The next year, I got another French teacher. And I'll never forget her. From day one, I started getting A's. The question was, had I become more intelligent? Had all of a sudden the penny dropped? No, the reason was she believed in me. So I started getting rid of that teacher that taught me that I was rubbish. Well, if you look at me now, I've been doing courses in French with French people for ages. Now, had I asked, or were I to ask my first French teacher, could I ever do this? He probably told me, you've got to be bloody kidding me. Of course you can't, you stupid idiot. And because I started believing him, I didn't do anything until a new teacher came along. So what does this say about beliefs? Well, beliefs basically are something that is not the same as truth. It's something that we think is a truth about ourselves, like people saying that I'm lazy. Umtebelli, I honestly thought I was lazy, and I actually prided myself on being lazy. I said, why should I go to all that trouble if I can be lazy? However, it turns out that if the mood strikes me, I'm anything but lazy. In other words, my belief is just that, a belief. It's not truth. But if your beliefs are limiting you, then you won't take action. If you believe that whatever it is you do is going to fail, you will not take action. You may say, no, I'm convinced this will work. And then this nagging little voice in your head says, you think that's going to work for you? Forget it. You are an idiot, an absolute moron. You'll never amount to anything. We all have voices like that. Unlike Sigmund Freud, who said, do you hear voices? That means you're insane. Now, we all hear voices, and we're not insane, I would hope. We hear voices that say, no, I don't think I can do this. And sometimes the voices take on the voice of somebody you know, somebody who told you in that particular tonality that you were useless. Or sometimes you hear a voice, like my mum's voice, that says, you can do it. Trust me, you're better than you think you are. And it all depends to what voice you listen to, doesn't it? If you listen to the voices that tell you that you're going to fail, trust me, the mind is a very loyal tool. It will cause you to fail because you're telling it to fail. If you listen to that other voice that says you can do it, you start thinking about how to do it. So, what does it mean? It's a prism. It's something goes in. It's a question, and the other, it's followed by an action. Suppose your question is, why do I always go wrong? The mind will start looking for things that will explain to you why you always go wrong. Does it make sense? Like, why does it always have to happen to me? And the mind comes back, because you're an idiot. That's that little voice. Because you're stupid. You'll never amount to anything. Now, so what sort of questions, if you want to empower yourself, what sort of questions do you ask? You've got to ask yourself empowering questions, like, how can I make this work with the tools I've got? Who do I need to make this work? Who can help me? What steps do I have to take? And those are what we call empowering questions. They drive the mind into finding new answers to a question. Now, you will agree with me, I'm sure, that if you ask yourself, how can I make this fail? That you come up with endless reasons about how we can make this fail. And that is because over the years in our educational system, and that's my personal opinion, we learned not to fail. And we found more ways of failing than we found ways of succeeding. And as a matter of fact, in schools, the worst thing that can happen today is give a wrong answer. So what do? You stop giving answers. You never volunteer. And that is all wrong. So more of our beliefs are geared towards disempowering than towards empowering. And the people that ask themselves the right empowering questions will always, always, always come out on top. Does it matter? Oh, yes, it does. It matters if I ask myself, what do I need to do to make it work, rather than what do I need to do to make it fail, because the latter comes naturally. Success or failures or ways of looking at things. Really? Of course not. Success is clear, isn't it? And failure is also clear. Well, it all depends. You will remember perhaps a week ago when you could still go to KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Well, just to get back to that story of Colonel Sanders. Colonel Sanders was in 1962, I think he was just turning 62. He left the army, he was pensioned off, and he got a very meager pension. This is America. And he tried to think of things that could make him supplement his meager wages. And he had nothing. And the only thing he found was a recipe that was quite unique, a chicken recipe that everybody loved. Everybody in the family and everybody connected to them. When they had this chicken, they said, oh, wonderful, you must actually produce this more often. So he said, I've got this chicken recipe. You know what? He had this brilliant idea. I'm going to sell it. I'm not going to ask money. So he went to the first cafe and he said, I've got this wonderful recipe and you don't have to pay anything for it. The only thing you need to do is pay me 10% of your turnover. So what do you think the guy said? The guy said, are you crazy? A recipe? I've got to pay 10% for a recipe? You've got to be kidding. I've got my own chicken recipe. So he was almost kicked out with his funny hat and his funny clothes, almost kicked out. And he lived in a car, driving to the next one. And every time he heard no's, and he must have heard at least hundreds of no's, until somebody said, actually, that sounds interesting, and this tastes really well, really good. Okay, I'm going to give it a try. So after hundreds of no's, he got one yes. Or he could have sat down and said, well, wonderful, I've got one yes. Now let's wait until the money starts rolling in. No, he continued and he went to the other one and another one. And after a couple of thousands of attempts, he had a business, a real business. And that's when he founded KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Now, of course, he was lucky. He had this recipe, didn't he? Well, ask yourself the following question. What if it were you and you had this recipe? How many attempts would you have tried until you said, I better change my recipe. I've got to find something else. This isn't working. Would you have gone to the effort of doing it 200, 300 times, hearing no's? Or would you have persevered? In other words, he went on until. And that's the secret of success. You've got to go on with unswerving determination until. So if you've got this brilliant idea, go on until you're successful. And visualize. He could see in his head, he could hear in his voice, in his ear, and he could feel in his bones that this recipe eventually would lead to success. So it's an attitude, success, rather than an outcome. If your attitude is, I'm going to fail, the outcome is failure. If your attitude is, it's going to be successful, it's going to be success. And that's what you need. So what is it that they wanted? Oprah Winfrey. She had a very poor start in life, and yet she succeeded, as very few people succeeded before her and after her. From a black family, very poor, raped, very bad example, you might think, she became one of the most successful people in the world. A person who spent 26 years in prison for what he believed in. And when he came out, he was determined to forgive. What an example. Brian Obama, from a very poor background as well, no future, but he could do one thing well, carry a ball. And he became a leader. They all had the same thing in common. They visualized before it happened. They visualized before anybody else could see it. They could hear it, they could see it, they could feel it. They were going to be a success. And they all had mentors. They all found people that they could actually mirror themselves onto. Well, do we have them? Well, you can find them in books. You can read about them. And nowadays, even you can go and look at YouTube and listen to them. Find themselves as if they are talking to you and telling you, yes, Chris, you can do it. Yes, Mtebeli. Yes, Lynn, we can do it. Just persevere. So find yourself a mentor and make it seem as if you're talking to them all the time and if they're talking to you. It's like this young archer who had this idol, a top archer, the master archer in the world in the Middle Ages. He was following him all around. He never spoke to him. And one day, that master archer found himself challenged by this young guy who could shoot an arrow just as straight as he could. And he was beaten by him. And then the archer, the master archer, went to the young archer and said, "Who taught you?" He said, "You did, master." And the master had never even spoken to him. So, find yourself such a master. Find yourself such an example and learn from them. Thank you.